right. Hello, everyone. This is Audrey Elise. Welcome to Miss Media and the Maker. Start that over. Welcome to Miss Media and the Maker. I'm here with Megan Nilsen. She is actually, first and foremost, we know each other through a couple different connections. First
hmm
off, I know your daughter. We go to GCU together, which is so exciting.
hmm
And then my sister actually has been a marketing intern and just a freelancer, just helping your brand as well, which
Yep.
is really, really exciting. And I'm just super
Mm.
excited to talk through a few things about how media works within your life and what you've done with media as well. And so, yeah, I'd love for you to just kind of explain what you do, how you got there, and yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Miss Media and the Maker. Such a great title.
Thank you.
And yeah, I love the connections. Yeah, your sister has worked with me and for me, and you connected me with Sarah Taylor to be on her podcast, which was amazing. So
Yes.
it's just a fun God connection. He keeps bringing us back together. But how did I get here? The age-old question, right?
hmm
I think it's a convergence of God's hand at work always, and then just kind of who He created me to be. It's funny if I look back because my if I was a high schooler and you would have asked me what do you want to do when you grow up, I would have said like broadcast journalism.
Yes.
So that was always what I wanted, or I wanted to be like a Broadway star or a
Mm.
broadcast journalist. So there's some kind of communication like inherent in me. I always liked English class and writing and communicating and doing like
Yeah.
speech and things like that. But that's not where I ended up professionally. So I went to college and actually studied Spanish and was like, what am I doing? I don't want to be a teacher, but I got to study abroad like 3 times. So it was the most
Mhm.
amazing 4 years of my life. And then when I graduated, I was like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life.
Exactly.
I feel completely lost. And so I
Mm.
felt like I was starting all over. True, full disclosure, I actually applied to Northwestern School of Journalism, but I did not get in. And I was like, I think I was pretty gun shy after that. I was like, who am
Mm.
I? That's like the top school in the country for journalism at the time, which I didn't really know when I applied. I was like, oh, I don't think I can get in. So
Whew.
anyway, so I graduate. I have no idea what to do. I work retail. I'm bored out of my mind. I hate that. I'm an
hmm
administrative assistant for somebody for a while. I'm like, I mean, fine, but boring. So finally, I actually went back to school to be a school counselor. And so I loved that job. I was like, okay, when I was in high school, like I feel like I could have benefited from just more guidance and somebody that was more approachable, et cetera, et cetera. So I was a school counselor for a while, then ultimately had a couple kids, adopted a couple kids. And by the time we had four and I was like pulling my hair out, I was a stay-at-home mom for a while.
Yeah.
So the communications sort of always been in me at some level. Obviously, the counseling, coaching, mentoring piece was there professionally, and there it sat for a long time. And when we adopted our youngest two kids, I just had a major life shift for obvious reasons, but also spiritually. I feel
Mm.
like I grew a lot and God just helped me kind of deconstruct some of the things that I was holding onto very tightly with my faith and my life that all revolved around control and appearance. And that really quickly shattered when I had no control and the appearance of things looked like it was going to be, really horrible, actually. So I went to counseling, and my counselor was incredible. And I saw her for a few years, and she was really helping me understand my identity in Christ and that motherhood was not my highest and greatest calling. Like I had to understand I was a daughter of God first and foremost, and then everything else came from that. My mothering, my marriage, my vocation. And so I had to kind of kind of right the ship, as they say. I felt like I was kind of like underwater. And by the time I was like, oh, okay, I need to be filled. I need to be whole and healthy as a human, as a woman. And then I can kind of pursue my calling. So all that to say, in 2020, I was just feeling restless. My kids were getting a little bit older, so I could kind of take my foot off the gas and kind of my hands off the wheel. Like they're like,
Mm.
Mom, stop, like micromanaging our life so much. Like you're driving us crazy. And I was working part time for a nonprofit ministry. I loved it, but I was kind of their like contract communications person. So back to communications, doing social media and writing newsletters. And I was like, what am I doing? And I felt like the Lord was like, Megan, you have a message inside of you. Like you've written a book. You are passionate about teaching people about the Lord, about the Bible, about spiritual growth, about healthy living. Like what do you want to do with that? Like I felt like he was saying to me, you're so comfortable propping everybody else up, encouraging everybody else to go do your thing, put yourself out there, share your voice. But are you doing that for yourself? Like, and so I did have this moment where I thought, oh my gosh, okay, I'm nervous and I'm scared, and this feels kind of pretentious. Like, why would I say, and now I have a message that I want to share with everybody? But it was
Mm.
God's message. And so he was like, are you being obedient or not? So
Wow.
I had a girlfriend who was building her business coaching business. And she was having a lot of success. She was helping people kind of start their entrepreneurship. And so I hired her as my very first business coach because I thought, well, okay, I have a stirring, I have a message, I have a passion for kind of coaching, guiding, mentoring, writing, communicating. Like, what do I do with that? Just felt like this really hodgepodge of gifts that I was like, I couldn't formalize it in any way. I wasn't, so we were talking about like, I could write for magazines or I could write, I could put myself out there as a speaker and like, what do I want to develop? And then after we worked together for a few months, kind of what's your zone of genius and what do people come to you for and what problem do you solve? So, if anybody's in the business space, these are all the questions you have to start asking and answering, right? And so then finally she said, "You know what? I want to hire you to be my spiritual life coach." And I was like, what? She said, yeah, I mean, I've got she had her financial coach and her physical coach and all these things, but she's like, I just want somebody that's not like my therapist. She's like, my therapist is helping me kind of go through childhood wounds and figure out like why I behave the way I behave. But I need someone in real time who can help me make decisions and process life through the lens of faith. And
Mm.
I want that to be you. So that's how the coaching piece started. And it really felt like this divine moment because like I said, like the counseling coaching piece has always been in me, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And I didn't want to go back to school counseling and get my license again and all that back up and running. And so it just felt like God gave me the green light to do that. So I started building the coaching business in that 2020, which first of all, if you're in media, that was like I was like just
Yeah.
the perfect storm. Like you
Yes.
could start anything online and everybody was listening.
Yeah.
So that gave a lot of people, including me, a jump start, which
Mm.
was incredible. And so for the first year and a half, I mean, everybody was saying yes. Yes, I'll join your study. Yes, I would like to coach with you. Yes, 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 yes.
Mm.
And that was a lot of fun. Since then, the world has kind of there's been an interesting ebbing and flowing, right? With kind of the waves of culture and how much people want to be online or not want to be online. So we can kind of go into that with media. I think the last thing I'll say, and then you can ask whatever question you want, is like media is it's ever evolving. And so you can't just start somewhere and say, this is what I do, and this is the media and the method how I do it. Yes, you have to start somewhere, but I would say the biggest piece of advice is to just stay agile and stay loose and fluid and know like at the core kind of what message are you putting out there that should not really change. I mean, you should have some sort of concrete foundation of like, okay, this is what I'm passionate about. This is how I'm supposed to bless people, teach people, whatever. But the way you do it and the
Mm.
way people respond and how you have to adjust and flow and pivot is constantly evolving. And it can get tiring sometimes where you're like, oh my gosh, I just figured out this. And now 6 months later, nobody wants that. They don't want,
Mm.
so you have to you have to pivot again. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like media, it's, you're always adjusting. You're so correct.
Always.
There was
Hmm.
such an amazing chance. I mean, most jobs went away and it was really hard during 2020, but then you were able to just open up and blossom into this amazing media podcast and this job and everything. But now it's true. A lot of people there's like a lot of restriction apps out there, and there's a lot of people trying to slow that down. And so that must be
Hmm.
really hard to engage an audience while it's kind of a battle every day.
Hmm.
And I'm also a marketing major as well as broadcasting. And to look through a marketing lens, like your target market looks like it's shifting all the
Hmm.
time, which
Hmm.
is a little bit hard. So it's like you're always trying to test like what are the needs of this audience? What are the needs of these people? And I think it's great that you have just a platform of being a coach for people so that um with jobs and everything that they can try to reach out and be like I don't know what job I want. I feel like that's consulting is actually a very needed job whenever because people are always asking
Needing advice.
questions. Yes,
Yeah.
like
You're like,
constantly.
you can charge for that advice, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's so real. And the fact
Hmm.
that you have that school counselor background, I can just see like God's provision in that route that you took actually, even though
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
didn't know at first, and then you were able to use that, which was sounds like a lovely time that you had
Hmm.
while raising your children and everything. But now that you're able to take that and put it in a spiritual lens is also beautiful. And I know my generation, we are all unfortunately very confused. We don't know how to like interact with people. I blame it a lot on
Hmm.
COVID.
Hmm.
Just especially the years younger than me struggle a
Hmm.
lot with just decisiveness and social
Hmm.
cues and
Hmm.
all of that. And so I feel like this is the perfect like consulting situation because we need a spiritual emphasis, but then we also need just like a mentor, someone older
Just
than us. To,
practice talking to people. I mean,
yeah.
I do. My heart is definitely connected to what you're saying because as a mom, and
Mm,
now my kids are between 18 and 24, so right in the zone where you are,
yeah.
and my 18-year-old, who's a bit younger than you,
Hmm.
is the one who struggles the most with all the things that you just discussed.
Yeah.
Decision making, even study skills. I mean,
Mm.
it just did a doozy on all kinds of things, communication and social skills, but
Yeah.
also academic and study skills. And it's been hard to rebuild,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Um,
For
yeah.
sure.
So that's tough. And the media thing is just such an interesting sort of teeter-totter because media is here to stay. I mean, technology is evolving at a pace we can't even keep up with, right?
Hmm.
So you do feel that pull, like some people are like, well, I'm off it entirely. I'm going to be off social media. And I feel like, if God says be off social media, then you just say yes and obey, right? Like,
Yeah.
but he's not telling everybody that. And I feel like in the Christian realm, we do walk that tension of being in the world but not of the world, to
Mm.
use that phrase that a lot of people like to use because it's biblical.
Yeah.
um but we are in the world and we're going to be living life with people and hopefully having relationships with Christians and non-Christians and showing the love of Jesus wherever we go. But
Hmm.
how do you be in media and not be of the world? I think that's the challenge for the Christian woman or man. I mean, we're women talking, but in the media space, women have been really rewarded for a lot of things that are of the world, which might be very, like scantily clad. And I'm trying to watch my language, right? I'm sure this is for kids or whatever, but
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
it's
it's just
real.
sexualized or just kind of very flamboyant, very out there, very like, look at me. And if you're a Christian woman, it is more about the heart. And so
Mm.
how do you really connect with your heart and understand who God made you, how he created you, what message he has for you, and figure out, okay, then how do I do that in such a way that is, I mean, the world isn't always going to pay attention. You're in marketing, so you kind of have to get bigger, flashier, louder,
Yeah.
but that's not the gospel. And
Mm-mm.
so it's an interesting tension for sure to live in.
Yeah. And as I'm starting my little podcast career,
Hmm.
it is interesting that tension of what do the people want? What do they, versus what does God want the people to hear? Like
Hmm.
what do we need to hear? Like how I need to do a heart check and say it's really not about marketing at the end of the day when you're doing a Jesus podcast because it's like what I think the people need versus what God really wants them to hear is a bit different. And
Hmm.
so I think that's a tension that I'm kind of trying to figure out and seeing what my generation and even other generations need.
Yeah.
that's such a good point of, especially as women, like, I mean, it's a tale as old as time of how women are portrayed within media or just within the world. We
Hmm.
have this interesting take on a lot of things, very sexualized or just very, um, I don't know, weak in a way. I don't know how to
Hmm.
explain
Hmm.
that better, but um, I'm just hopeful that more women in media or just, I mean, any industry, but that we're able to encourage each other in our God-given talents and our purpose and
Hmm.
not just shy back into the stereotypes of being a woman. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's
Yeah.
a
And I
lot to
think
carry.
in the church, we don't necessarily have to go here, but there's a lot of, um, different theologies on women in the church too, and whether
Mm,
women should be able to speak and preach and be ordained. And I mean, the list goes on. So that's an interesting one as well. But you can tell me if this is true, but I've heard statistics that your generation, Gen Z, as they say,
yes.
is very spiritually open, not necessarily
Yes.
Christian,
Hmm.
open to what is out there that's beyond this world because you guys have seen enough and the world is so crazy that you're like, okay, surely there's something more than this.
Yeah.
So, in some ways, I feel like there's a big opportunity and a responsibility for us as Christians to be like, yes, there's something more, and his name is
Yeah.
Jesus,
Hmm.
so that people can hear it's not, crystals and rocks and, all that kind of
Just, yeah.
whatever and self-enlightenment and keep going,
Yeah,
but it seems very attractive because you're looking for something more than this world can offer. So
for
I think it's
sure.
a privilege to be in media in a Christian way. Um, but it's not always going to be like the bestseller.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
But
I I honestly think it's literally the perfect opportunity. I've had this, I don't know, this idea that millennials, the generation
mm-hmm,
before me, um they've had this kind of trauma built in. A lot of church hurt
mm-hmm,
has happened
mm-hmm,
throughout, I would say, like the early 2000s till like 2020, I would say.
mm-hmm,
And politically, things rose a lot, during 2020 and everything.
mm-hmm,
And I think that kind of marked their generation. And I know a lot of millennials that have a really hard time with religion. And
mm-hmm,
they just grew up in this time of like, I mean, I'm not a millennial, but I've heard from others that like a lot of it was based off of like, you have to be modest, you have to be like a perfect Christian girl,
mm-hmm,
all this
mm-hmm,
stuff. And like, the gospel was forced on them, it felt like.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so I know a lot of millennials who have church hurt and church trauma and all of those things.
Mhm,
And it's really
mhm,
hard. But I think, yeah, my generation, Gen Z, is much more open because I feel like we've seen it all, like politically, religiously, like just
mhm,
so many ideas going out there. And I think creatively, Christians are getting really excited. Like ever since TikTok began and everything, so many more Christians have been opening up and standing up, starting podcasts, doing different things. And so it's a lot more attractive, I think, to my generation rather than the
mhm,
generation before, because we're we're kind of releasing fun pop like music through a Christian lens, or we're doing cute like Christian clothes, and we're having fun with it. And I think
mhm,
that's much more attractive to a young person rather than earlier in the decade or the century, I guess. Um, it was a lot more just being forced upon and it looked
mhm,
outdated. But now it's more exciting. And I think that's why the media is so important. Just making it, I'm not going to say cool again, but making Christianity like what it is. It's timeless. I mean,
mhm.
he never changes.
Right. The beginning and
So
the end. So definitely timeless.
yeah, exactly. So it's really
Mhm,
cool seeing that in the modern age, which is my
mhm,
whole point on my other podcast, which is Jesus and Jorts, is navigating the young Christian life in a
mhm,
modern world. And I mean, especially GCU, I see it all around me. Everyone's just so excited about the Lord because we're all just on fire in our own ways. And I think
mhm,
creatively, the media has really helped that through worship, through videos, through sermons, through fashion. I don't know. I'm just really amped up
Yeah,
about my
it's exciting.
generation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Me too. You're making me excited.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about publishing as well when you think about media, because the cool thing is publishing is very accessible. So it
Hmm.
used to be you're not going to write a book unless you have a traditional contract and you better have like, a bunch of followers and all these kinds of things. That still
Hmm.
works. That's still true for traditional publishing, but because there's self-publishing or hybrid publishing, messages can get out there quicker. Um, but I think the challenge for us on the other side there is discerning what's truth and what's actually biblical and what is actually. I think that's the other side of the coin of, okay, we're going to blow up and talk about everything on TikTok and everything on
Yeah.
podcasting and books. And then you're like, wait, what did they just say? Is that theologically right? I don't know if that's theologically right.
Right.
So I feel like as Christians, we need to do our due diligence and get back
Hmm.
in the word. I mean, I
For
know it
sure.
sounds like old school, but like, okay, what does
No.
the Bible have to say? And what does my pastor have to say who's gone through
Mhm.
theological training? So I think the encouragement is get out there,
Yeah.
share your book, share your podcast, share your song, and be learning yourself and be discerning and finding people and spaces and places and the
Yeah.
word of God that will really inform what you are saying
Hmm.
so that the you married those two things and it's really exciting.
That's a perfect explanation.
Mhm.
A lot of like how I think about that is grace and truth, having a balance
Mhm.
of both. Because I think with the previous generation, it was so focused on the truth, which is an amazing thing, but it
Mhm.
kind of pushed people away. And our generation focuses on the grace, and I think that's amazing. But
Mhm.
it's also like, okay, now we're all posting what we believe about Jesus and everything, and that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, like maybe we're like, oh, it says that somewhere in scripture, and then we don't actually look back and like have the
Right.
citation for it, the
Right.
reference
Or
for
go, I think
it.
it says that in scripture, but I don't really want to live that way, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh yeah, it says this, but I'm like, God
I'm
loves
sure
me,
it's fine.
so
Yeah. We're
yeah.
good. We're good.
No, that's a
Listen, that's just the
yeah.
20s, girl. That's the 20. I mean, sure, Gen Z, whatever. Like, that's the 20s. We're all like, well, is that really a big deal? I don't
Right.
know. So,
Right. And living in that tension of being young and like trying to
yeah,
follow the Lord, but then there's just temptations around.
of
And
course. Of course.
whew,
That's
it's
why we need
yeah.
mentors and people to walk with us and be like, yo,
Mhm.
girl, I love you. And I think you might want to check yourself here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And speaking of mentors and everything, have you used your like kingdom coaching and everything? Is there a young audience that comes to you, or is it more just like anyone and anything that needs advice? And how do
Yeah.
you approach that?
Well, I have coached a few college age girls and I love it. I love, love, love it because I think you all are so eager and open and honest and
Hmm.
also trying to figure out how to live by faith and grow in faith in a world that is not always, like kind to that and
Yeah.
helpful for that. How do you make decisions? How do you figure out dating? So I do love that. I mean, naturally speaking, because I'm a middle-aged mom. My husband's like, why do you talk about yourself like that? I'm like, is that a bad word? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm a mother in midlife.
that's great.
Then mostly it's women in my age and stage that are kind of figuring out like how to launch kids and how to build those relationships and follow your calling. So that's naturally who kind of hangs out in my world. But
Hmm.
I personally just love to work with anybody that's stuck and is like, oh my gosh, I know that there's more for me. And I think God is calling me someplace else, but I just don't
Mm.
know. I don't know what it is exactly. And if I do know what it is, I don't know how to get there. So
Yeah.
clarity and strategy are kind of my two main things. Discerning, hearing God's voice, getting clear about your values and what God's calling you to, and then figuring out, okay, now how do you get there? What do you got to do? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think those are the biggest questions that people really do run into when they end a
Hmm.
season of life. It doesn't have to be where I am about to graduate college. It could
Hmm.
be like, oh, like now
Anything.
you're
Yeah,
done
totally.
having kids, now you're married, now just anything. Yeah,
Girl,
exactly.
it never stops. The problems never stop. So
Yeah.
sometimes you just need for a period of time, like counts, because people are often asking me, what's the difference between counseling and coaching and consulting? So Counseling really is tackling your past,
Mm,
understanding where trauma, where wounding, where pain has come from, and how to heal and understand, like what's going on there. And then coaching is okay, we've done some healing, we got our head above water, we're looking forward, but where do we go? And
yeah.
so the coach can come in for a season of 3 months, 6 months, whatever, a year, and help you kind of get through a transition until you kind of settle in the next phase of life. And there you go. And then consulting really is just like, pay me the big bucks to tell your corporation, like, how to
Yeah.
take care of people. And then off I go. So consultants are kind of dip in and out. Coaches walk with you for usually a finite season of time to get you from A to B, and counselors they could be with you kind of forever, you know?
Okay, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so those like coaching sessions, those are those calls? Are those like
With me
individ
specifically, it's
Yeah.
it's on Zoom. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It
then
could be
with
on the phone, but it's virtual. Yeah.
yeah, and then with your
Mm-hmm.
podcast, is it like interview style with people or how does that all work? Like how are your
Yeah,
episodes kind of
podcasting media is
formatted?
like that's my favorite thing. I love
Yeah.
podcasting. It's so amazing. And so for me, okay, so if anybody's thinking about podcasting, and this is kind of what my podcast coach told me, is it really is best practice in some ways, not always, but to do a lot of solo episodes so that you can establish yourself and your voice and
Mm,
build kind of the know, like, and trust factor with your listeners. They get to know you, they trust
yeah.
you as a person, as an expert, relatable in some way. So I
Mm-hmm.
did that for a year. I had just my own solo episodes every week for a year. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. Like, how do I
Yeah.
keep thinking of things to talk about?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think I'm going to add in interviews. So the second year, I added in interviews and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I love talking to
Yeah.
people. I love asking them questions. So now it's kind of a hybrid. It's mostly interviews because I
Mm-hmm.
love that so much. And you don't have to do so much prep work of like writing notes and just figuring out where the heck what you're talking about for 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But I will kind of flow back into like single episode, like solo episodes, when I want to teach about something specific. So, for example, as we're recording this, it's Lent in the Christian calendar. And so
Yeah.
I decided I'm going to take the 6 weeks of Lent and just do a listening series and really go through the Gospel of John from John 13 to John 20, which is like the end of Jesus's life. So that's just me. But
Yeah.
then coming up again, I'll throw those interviews back up there. But I think the main thing, if you're going to, host a podcast, is like, what's the through line? Like, why do people come? So for you, it's about being a woman in media, especially a Christian woman in media. And what does that mean? What does that look like? Why is it important? For me on my podcast, it's about hearing God's voice. So I
Mm.
love to remind people that they can hear God's voice. I interview people about, how do you know? When's the first time you heard God's voice? And how do you know it was his voice? And then when you did, like, how did that change your life? What did you do because of that? How did it turn out? So there's
Yeah.
kind of those pieces. So people know when they come to the show, oh, she's going to be talking about hearing God's voice and what it looks like to live in active faith. When they come to your show, they're going to be like, oh, she's talking about women in media
Yeah.
and all the different ways what that could look like. So you just kind of have to have a general landing spot. And then from there, I like podcasting because it's so forgiving. Like, we can have this conversation. You can edit some things out if you want to.
Yeah.
And then you can go back. You can change the title a year from now. If you're like, oh, nobody liked that title, I'm going to go change the title. Or, or we record this conversation. And then a couple weeks later, you're like, oh, I said something in that show with Megan, but what I really meant was XYZ. And you
Yeah.
can explain yourself. So it's a fun, real time kind of media
Mm-hmm.
that's able to get out into the world, but you can also contain it a little bit and make adjustments and get
Yeah.
creative if you want to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I mean, I've barely started, just a couple episodes out, but it's a really fun experience because
Mm-hmm.
it's not fully putting yourself like on the line in a media perspective, but it's really like experimental and
Mm-hmm.
fun and
Mm-hmm.
it has brought out so many conversations and so many rabbit holes of different things that I never thought I would talk about. And it just becomes better and better. And I just get so excited because I've learned so much about people within like so little time. Because these podcasts are only like 30 minutes to an hour. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just really cool diving a bit deeper. And I do love that you said that you kind of started out just like on your own personally and then did interviews. I think that's really
Hmm.
cool. And I've been living in this like weird tension of should I do that? Should I not? And that just gets me more excited to hear from your perspective of finding your own voice and your brand and
Yes. My
everything.
advice would be definitely. Like,
Yeah.
I think you could probably have a show that's kind of a hybrid. So it's
Mm-hmm.
even if you're doing a weekly episode, I don't know how you're doing it, but if you're doing a week,
Yeah.
you could be like, okay, here's my Audrey's take on X. And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to interview a couple of people about X and see what they say. And you
Yeah.
could kind of go back and forth like that. Or you interview, say you're interviewing me, and then you're like, okay, what are my takeaways from my conversation with Megan? And then it's just Audrey being like, okay, she said this and this and this.
Yeah.
This is what I think. This is what I'm going to do. So it is fun. I think you should do it.
That's
Yeah.
great. And
Mhm.
also within your own podcasts and interviews, and that's amazing. I mean, do you do it kind of in a series every time with your
Sometimes yes and sometimes no. So
Yeah.
don't do what I say, not what I do, Audrey. Come
Hey, no worries. But
on. Yeah.
along with that, has there been kind of like a favorite string of series or like a favorite topic or interview that you've
Mm,
encountered recently?
that's a good question. Everybody's my favorite. It's like my
Yeah.
kids. I okay, so series wise, I enjoy when it's me teaching. If God puts something on my heart that I see a through line of a concept and I want to draw that out biblically, I really enjoy doing that. Like last year I did a series called So That, and it was because I was reading through scripture and every time I landed on this phrase so that like you are light,
Mm,
you are the light of the world so that, we can glorify God. Like what's the point? So that was kind of a fun series to do because it
yeah.
kind of stretched me. And then interview wise, I just love interesting people and people that are very vulnerable and open to like the whole of their experience is just a lot of fun. I think it's very relatable. People grab onto it. So
Mm,
yeah, just the more natural and vulnerable people can be, it's always good.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
so great. Within kind of like turning the topic a little bit,
Hmm.
within your consultations and everything, um, like, I mean, the whole point is that people are feeling lost and they want a kind of a path, a way out and
Hmm.
everything. Um, what are like the biggest themes or questions that you get when you see people who are feeling lost and how can they kind of combat that?
Mm. Yeah, it's one of my favorite questions to ask too. You're a natural, Audrey. Like, what
Yeah.
themes are you
Well,
seeing?
are you the ones
Um,
that kind of like ask that? Like they're not really asking you, you kind of just lead with questions or
well, it's both. I mean, the reason that someone would be attracted to and kind of seek out a life coach is because they're stuck somewhere. And a lot of
Mhm.
times, I would say at the top of the list, it is purpose. And that could mean your job. So for you graduating from college, you're like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
I am walking out the door on this date, April 30th, and then May 1st, I have nothing to do.
right.
So then a life coach could come in and be like, okay, well, let's talk to me about what are your skills and your talents and who do you know and what conversations do you need to get out there. And so you're kind of putting together a plan
Yeah.
of execution and how to find a job, to put
Hmm.
it very frankly, that you might like and that's going to pay you well. And there's a lot of factors in where do you want to live and how much do you need to get paid and what are you willing to do. And so we kind of bring your life together and all the values and the kind of the circumstances that make up you and then make a plan to like find something that fits, you
Yeah.
know? So a lot of it is vocational. People will say, I feel stuck here, bored here, directionless here. I think I want to do something else. What could that be?
Yeah.
So that's where you kind of ask a lot of those clarifying questions and then move the people along. I would say the other space that's pretty common is relational. So, for
Yeah.
moms, it could kind of be with their kids. Like I'm feeling just like I don't have a good relationship here. And I'm not a therapist, but I'm also
Yeah.
a mom. And so
Mm.
sometimes just relational, you just got to work it out and say, well, what are you holding on to? And what's yours to own that you need to get, right with, and where do you draw the boundaries and things like that. So I think vocational and relational are probably the top two general themes that
Yeah.
people get stuck
Yeah.
and they're like, this cannot be my life forever. I can't live like this. So I got to make a decision. And, sometimes they're pretty big decisions. I've had women come to me
Hmm.
and be like, I don't know if I should stay in this marriage or not. That's a tough one because I can't tell you, I don't want to tell you what to do. I shouldn't tell you what to do, but I can ask the right questions to help you get clear about what you are thinking and what God is telling you. I would
Yeah.
say the last thing I would say there is one thing I notice about a lot of people, whether you're 20 or whether you're 80, they just don't you trust themselves. They don't trust that they really know how to hear God. They don't really trust that they know how to make a good decision. So a lot of this work is helping someone kind of clear away the junk and the noise to rebuild self-trust.
Yeah.
That and if you're a person of faith, to rebuild trust, like God can speak to you. He does have good plans for you. He will give you wisdom.
Mm.
You can trust what you're hearing if it's in line with the character of God, and then you can walk it out. So there's a lot of rebuilding of trust and confidence in
Yeah.
people's own decision making.
Yeah. Along with
Hmm.
that, once you get to the result, how are people standing usually? Like, are they all over the place? Are some people like, wow, like my life is put together now? Or is it more just like a send off of like, I have the tools I need and now I can go and try? Like, how does that ending
It's all of
process
the
all work?
above. It's all
Yeah.
of the above. And the other option is, wow, we've worked together for 6 months and you're still like there's still
Mm,
mindset blocks that people are like not getting over.
yeah.
And I don't know. I have to try to not own that myself. But yeah, some clients are a little bit trickier that way because they come in with some really pretty big like strongholds of thought or some big challenges that are kind of standing in their way mentally, and they just week after week it's like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like we've talked about this. This is like the
Yeah.
hamster wheel." And some people are just sponges and they're quick learners and they're like, "You're right. I do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna work on that. I'm not gonna do that." It
Yeah.
just is super personality dependent, but it can go any which direction. But the first part is
Mm-hmm.
that's what we want is, oh my gosh, at the beginning of our work together, I said I wanted to find a job that was in line with my da da da. And look,
Yeah.
and now I found it.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. Okay, go to work. And then 6 months later, they're like, okay, and now my boss is driving me crazy and I'm not sure if I like this job. I'm like, all right, let's get to it. What do we need to shift now? So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So you've had people come back and be like, I need a second round kind of thing. Okay.
Sometimes, not that often, to be honest. It just depends on how deep of work,
Yeah.
they need. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it sounds like kind of similar to therapy in a way where like some people are much better or it's like, oh, we need to work a little more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I bet it also kind of depends on the kind of strongholds that are in your life, whether it's
Uh-huh.
like fear-based or shame or anything. And
Yeah.
I don't know, that's
I
really
think
hard.
this work, honestly, it works best and
Hmm.
for people that desire deep self-awareness. So they do want to honestly know themselves and their blind spots, and they want that. They want to be aware
Hmm.
of. And then people who are verbal processors. So
Yeah.
anybody that's like, talk, 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 talk. If somebody says, I can figure out what to do if I just talk about it, a life coach is perfect for you
Yeah.
because people that are real internal processors, it's a little more difficult. You need to find that pacing of maybe now you need to go like journal for a little while and then come back to me. Like they need time to think.
Yeah.
But people that are verbal processors and that's how they make decisions and they really want to be deeply self-aware, this is great.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Yes.
Oh, that's
And I'm always like,
awesome.
it's going to help your marriage and it's going to help your relationship with your sister because now that person doesn't have to hear you do all the processing. You get to come to a coach, process, think it all through, and then go back to your boyfriend or your sister or whatever, and be like, okay, I think I figured it out. And they're like,
Yeah.
that sounds amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
for not dragging me down with you. So
Yeah, sometimes you just need
Uh,
like that unbiased opinion coming into your life, seeing
totally.
with
Yeah.
new eyes and everything.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
Well, thank you
You're
for
welcome.
just talking
Yeah.
about all the amazing stuff in your life. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Um, I mean, with your kingdom coaching,
hmm
what is like one piece of advice or maybe like a Bible passage that you're just strongly thinking about that could encourage maybe post-grad students or any woman in any season um, within kingdom coaching? Like, what would you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Well, I have a few favorite verses, but maybe for the purposes of this interview, I like Habakkuk 2:2. So it's pretty common, but like write the vision, make it
Mm,
plain. Why? So that the messenger can run with it. So I feel like that's a great verse, especially in the media space. Like if God's given you a vision of some kind, write it down, own it, pray over it,
mm,
get clear about it, and then run with it. Like make it plain, like say it so that people can hear it and you can run with it and you can evolve along the way. But yeah,
yeah,
Habakkuk 2:2. There you go.
that's great. And oh,
Oh, the second part of that verse is even if it tarries, wait for it. Even if it delays, wait for it. So that's why I love that verse because he's like, hey, you get that vision, you write it down. Oh, and sometimes it's going to feel like it's taking a while. Sometimes it's going to feel like it's not immediate, but wait for it. It will come, it will happen. And
yeah,
that is the life of faith. I mean, that's the journey of the Christian is to wait on God's timing. So,
patience. Whew,
mhm.
it's a big
Yep.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much
You're
again.
welcome. Anytime. It's my pleasure. I
I,
can't
f-
wait to see
I
what
feel
you do
like,
in the world, girl.
thank you. I feel like I just got free coaching. So
Yeah. Yeah. Keep
thank
going. You're like,
you.
the interview's actually not over.
No, yeah, by the way, we're
Just
gonna
kidding.
do like a whole consultation after this. But
Totally.
thank you again. Thank you guys
You're
for
welcome.
listening. Yeah, have a good one, guys.
All right. Thanks, Audrey.